Okay, hello guys. So I pray you are having a very blessed Apostles' Fast, a very blessed day, and I pray that by the grace and the will and the work of God, that this video may be fruitful in any way, shape, and form for you. In the past couple of videos, we've taken a look at the Coptic language. We briefly looked at its history. We looked at the letters of the Coptic language and how we pronounce those letters, as well as some basic reading exercises. And honestly, if your goal is just to learn how to read Coptic and how to engage with Coptic liturgically, you know, on the essence of just reading it, you're pretty much all set, right? At that point, it's just a matter of listening to hymns, listening to the doxologies, and just repeating after them, practicing reading on your own, all of that jazz. So if your goal is just to learn how to read, you're all set. But if you're looking to understand Coptic at a more deeper level, at a more advanced level, and you don't have to, right? This is not like you're a better Christian because you understand Coptic grammatically. It's not that at all. But if you're interested in understanding Coptic on a grammatical level, then this is the video where that kind of begins. And this is the video where I pray that by the end of, you can begin to take a look at portions of Coptic in the liturgy, in the Bible, in Tasbeha, and be able to say, hey, I understand what that word is, or why that word looks the way it does, right? So that's the goal at the end of the day. So this can kind of mark its beginning as the first lesson of Coptic grammar, okay? The first lesson of Coptic grammar, Coptic sentence construction, all of that. All right. So, what are we going to look at today? Today, we're going to look at nouns. Okay. And nouns are the most fundamental part of a Coptic sentence. In general, in any sentence, they're the most fundamental thing because they give us a subject, they give us an object, they gave us something to work with. If I just had verbs, right, and adverbs, ran quickly, well, who's running quickly? Where are they running to, right? All of those details are filled in via nouns. And I think nouns are also perhaps the most straightforward, I would argue, in terms of understanding. So I think they're a pretty good spot to begin with. So nouns in Coptic, again, subject, object, right? They can be a person, they can be a place, they can just be referring to a thing. Okay? And nouns in Coptic operate similarly, but also in some ways differently from nouns in the English language. How so? Well, unlike English, Coptic nouns have a masculine and feminine version, or masculine, excuse me, and feminine identity. I shouldn't say version. Masculine or feminine identity. If you're familiar with a language like Spanish, for example, right, you have masculine and you have feminine words. So I'm going to say some words in Spanish. Please forgive me if you don't know any Spanish at all, right? But the word la biblioteca means the library in Spanish. La precedes biblioteca, indicating it's a feminine word, right? La señorita, la familia, right? All of those are feminine. El señor, right, would be masculine. It's preceded by el. Okay. And we have something very similar in Coptic. Okay. We have something very similar in Coptic where you have an article or a thing that precedes the actual noun proper. And that gives it its masculine or feminine identity. Because the question you might be asking is, well, how do I know if a noun is masculine or feminine? That's the part of Coptic that's a little bit different from English that might take a little bit of getting used to. The second, and this is similar to English, is that we have singular and plural, right? If I have multiple uh, sensors, that's different than one sensor, for example. If I have one table versus three tables, right? I have to make an indication of difference in the amount, right? Is it a single table or is it multiple tables? Of course, down the line, we'll get to expressing a specific number of things, but for now, there is also a differentiation that exists between singular and plural, okay? So you might be asking, okay, sounds good. I understand that there's masculine Coptic nouns, there's feminine Coptic nouns, and There are plural versus singular Coptic nouns. How do I know if a noun is masculine or feminine in the Coptic language? We're going to introduce here the concept of, forgive me, MD. Okay. So we're going to introduce here the concept of articles. Okay, an article. Articles are going to be what allow us to differentiate a noun in masculinity or femininity, as well as singular or plural. What is an article? An article is a series of letters that precedes the noun. Okay, it's a series of letters that precedes the noun that gives us information about the identity of said noun. Okay, you're thinking, okay, maybe this is something complex. It's actually not that complex. It's basically the equivalent of, okay, the equivalent of the word the before a noun. Okay? So if I said father, obviously it's going to be preceded by the father. Okay? The father. But in the Coptic language, that quote unquote the that you put before the noun tells us is the noun masculine or is the noun feminine, as well as is the noun singular or is the noun plural. Okay? Now, what are these articles? Okay? We have our masculine articles. Okay? Masculine articles. And of course, for now, we're going to focus on feminine articles as well. We'll get to singular and plural in a little bit. Okay. So we have masculine articles and we have feminine articles. All right. Let's focus on the masculine articles. What are the masculine articles? In the Coptic language, the masculine articles are p, p, usually preceded with a jinkim, so it's an ep, and f. Okay. Those are the masculine articles. What are the feminine articles? The feminine articles are t, et, and f. Okay? So masculine articles p, ep, f, feminine articles t, et, f. Okay? Sounds good so far. Now, how does the article combine with a noun? Well, the noun is going to be a vocabulary word, and I have the Quizlets posted the um, for the vocab words. Okay, so all you're going to be adding is the appropriate article before that noun, before that vocab word. Okay, so what's an example word that we can use? Well, we can look at a very simple term, yot. Okay, yot, which is yota followed by u followed by taf. Yot. What is yot? Yot is the noun for father. Okay, father. However, we need to place an article before it. And this is really important. A noun cannot exist without the article before it. Okay? So you cannot have yot on its own. There needs to be an article before it. So if I was to just say the father, okay, I'm going to use the article p, piot. Okay? Piot. Piot. Okay, that's all it is. Piot. The father. Okay? Piot. The father. Now you might say, okay, why are we using P and not ep and F? Okay. That's because, and I'm going to introduce something and just follow along on this part. Ep and F and et and eth are what we call weak articles, while P and T are what we call strong articles. Now, it might seem confusing, like what's a strong article and what's a weak article? Like, why aren't articles just articles? Okay. Strong articles are used to indicate a weaker subject or a weaker noun, while weak articles are used to indicate a stronger noun or a stronger subject. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that in English, we have the father, as it's written like this. We also have the father, right, with an uppercase F. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sounds good. In Coptic, if I wanted to say the uppercase father, as in God the Father, I would just uppercase the yota. Doesn't work that way, right? We don't have cases in the same way we do with English. So instead, when we want to indicate something authoritative, something big, something specific, such as a proper noun, for example, or the Father, the true physician, the good shepherd, as we refer to God, for example, right? You're going to use a weak article, okay? And you've seen this word before because ask yourselves, have you seen the word ifyot, right? You've seen the word ifyot in Coptic. What is ifyot, right? It is the Father. When we say Chen Ephron Emephiot, right? Chen Ephron Emephiot in the name of the Father. We're not referring to just a Father, the Father, like some random guy, but God the Father. So we use Ephiot. Now you might be asking, sounds good. Okay. Why are we using Ephiot, not Epiot, right? Because isn't ep also a weak article? Why don't we use ep? Okay. And it's because we have a particular rule for when we use ep versus f. Okay? When you have a noun that starts with ro, yota, vita, o, lavla, me, or ne, we use fe instead of ep. Okay? In all other cases, you're using ep. So I'll give you an example of a word that you've likely seen. Ep, right? Epshiri. What's epshiri? Shiri is the Coptic noun slash word for son. Okay, son. But when we say epshiri, we're saying the son, as in uppercase S, right? So that's where when you read the introduction to the Egbeya, where it says Chen Efron emefiot nemepshiri, right? Chen Efron emefiot, right? In the name of the Father, Chen Ephron em Efiot nem. Nem is a Coptic word meaning with. Epshiri, right? Epshiri, the son. So Chen Ephron em Efiot nem Epshiri nem pep nevma ethoeb. Okay? Epnevma, the spirit. And again, you're using ep, not p. Okay? So ep nevma, meaning um, the spirit, right? So epshiri, efyot, all of these are indications of the fact that we have a more authoritative, a bigger, a much more unique, a stronger noun, right? So it seems weird because you might be thinking, well, strong article, strong noun, it's the opposite. If you have a strong article, it overpowers, it doesn't leave room for the noun. But if you have a weak article, it's meek, it leaves a lot of room for the noun. So when we want to strengthen the noun that's ahead of the article, we use a weak article. And when we want to weaken the noun ahead of the article, we use a strong article. Okay? So that's where we get those. So if you begin to look at Coptic and you begin to open, if you just open up the Tasbih, right? Um, Tenthino e ebshoy, ni shiri ente pio oini, right? P o oini, right? P o oini, P means the, oini means the light, or sorry, light. So P o oini, the light, right? So P is operating as an article. So if you open up your Coptic reader right now and you begin to open up Tasbih and the liturgy in the Bible, you're going to see lots of articles because you're going to see lots of nouns. So where there's a noun, there must be an article as well. Okay? Because those articles are how we know is it masculine or feminine, right? There's also some words where inherently you're going to be able to know is it masculine or is it feminine, right? So a good example of that is the word mauve, okay? Mauve, which simply means mother, okay? Mauve, right? When we talk about Saint Mary, we use what? Eth mauve. Why do we use eth, right? Because mauve means mother, but we're referring to the mother of God, eth mauve, right? So we're using th. And it's actually following the same rule. So likewise, for the feminine case, we use eth instead of et, okay? In all these cases. I call this reboln, right? Reboln. So you have ro, re, I, iota, vita, o, lavla, me, ne. Reboln, right? So in that case, these instances, you're using either theta or the instead of ep or et, okay? In the case of nouns. So seems cool, all right? Awesome, great, nice. What about the case of plural and singular? Okay. In the case of plural and singular, we have only two articles that we need to know of. Okay. The first is that of ni and nen. Okay. Nen is the weak plural article. Okay. And it does the same thing. Ni is the strong plural article. Okay. So I'll give you two examples. All right. In Tenthino, we say Tenthino e ipshoi ni shiri. Okay, remember what we learned here. Shiri means son. So what is ni shiri, right? Ni shiri means the sons or the children, right? And that's what Tenthino translates to, right? Tenthino e ipshoi ni shiri inte pio oini enten hos ipshoi senteni gom translates to arise, O you children of the light, let us praise the Lord of hosts, right? Arise, O you children. Tenthino e ipshoi ni shiri, right? Ni shiri, plural, arise, O you children, because it's children in the plural, so nishiri, okay? But we can also have um, cases of strong nouns, so to speak, right? Where we need to use nen. So, for example, nenshiri means the sons, and I believe it's nenshiri in Aaron, like the sons of Aaron, right? Um, in that case, you're going to use nen. Why? Because the sons of Aaron is a an identity group, right? It's not a it's an identity, right? It's a specific group of people. It's almost like it's like a proper noun, right? Um, so nenshiri, for example, would be the sons, but with an uppercase s, right, referring to this specific group, okay, this specific identity. All right. So it operates largely the same. All right. Now that sounds great, amazing. All right. But when we speak in English, we're not always speaking with regards to the, right? You'll notice that sometimes nouns are preceded by the, right? So we'll say the king, for example, right? The king. But also we might say a king, right? Not everything is about the, sometimes we have a. And what's the difference when we say the king versus a king? Well, the king is more definite, right? The king refers to a specific king, or perhaps the king as in a specific group. But a king is more general, it's more indefinite. And that's where we're going to introduce an additional type of article. It's called an indefinite article. Okay, an indefinite article. Indefinite articles do not have anything to worry about masculinity or femininity, just singular or plural. Okay, and the singular indefinite article is u. Okay, u, singular indefinite article. All right, the other is khan, which is the plural indefinite article. Okay. So let's think of an example of that, right? If we're thinking about ushiri, a son, right? Ushiri, right? If I wrote ushiri, that translates to, right? Uh, or sorry, I've been spelling shiri wrong. Forgive me. Should be an epsilon there. I just realized. Okay, ushiri, right? That means a son versus, let's say, for example, pishiri, the son. All right, or epshiri, the son, usually reference to Christ. Okay, so you'll see this as well. Han, right? Um, Haneshviri, right? As an example word. So Han is just meaning a or an, right? Or some. In the case of plural, Han is best translated as some, right? So if we did um, Han Mav, right? Han Mav, it's going to be a strange kind of case, um, but Han Mav literally just means some mothers, right? Some mothers. All right, that's all it means. So again, the key to nouns is just understanding those prepositions. Sorry, understanding those articles. Okay, but then the rest of it is kind of collecting those vocab words, learning those words, and then being able to apply them. Right. But once you have the prepositions down, or excuse me, the articles down, you'll be able to kind of get the hang of things. Okay. Now I keep saying prepositions because I want to move into prepositions. Okay. And the reason I want to move into prepositions is because when we introduce prepositions, we can begin to form very basic phrases, very basic expressions, very basic ideas. Okay. Now, when you read Coptic, you probably see many expressions, right? Prepositions, sorry, many prepositions, right? Many prepositions. I'll give you an example of one preposition that we commonly see, chen, okay? Chen, which translates to in, all right? Or let's say, for example, he, which means on. Or one that you've likely heard before, he ten, which means through, right? There's many prepositions. Again, they're going to be posted in the Quizlet, okay? But prepositions are important because they allow us to relate two nouns together, okay? They allow us to relate two nouns together. And I want to introduce here maybe one of the most important prepositions that you're going to learn in all of Coptic. That is the case of en or ente. Okay, en or ente. So en or ente. What does that translate to? Of. Okay, of. But we use them for different cases. They're almost interchangeable. They're very much interchangeable. Um, but there's a couple cases, right? um, if we have two nouns that we're trying to relate, right? And let's say we have two definite nouns, right? So we have two definite articles before the nouns, right? Specifically, I'm talking about en and te. When we have two def nouns, use en or ente, okay? If the first noun is indefinite, however, right? Let's say that, then it's better for us to use en te, okay? So ente is the safer option when you have a mix of indefinite and definite. When you have two definite nouns, you're pretty safe. You can use n. Okay? But there is a special case. There's a special case. When the second noun, right, the one that the preposition is being applied to, okay, starts with one of the following letters: me, vita, pe, fe, or this. See, right? We change n to m. So m is used as a preposition, but it means the same thing. Why do we change it to m? Because basically, all of these here have like a B or a very hard beginning, a P or F, very aggressive sound, right? A V, a B, a F, a P sound, right? So M, B, P, F, Psi, right? If we use N before them, it's going to sound strange, right? So for example, imagine I have Mon, N Mon, weird, right? M Mon flows easier. Imagine I have, um, let's see, um, Ba, right? Ba. Enba, weird. Emba, easier, right? Imagine I have p or po, right? Enpo, weirder, harder. Empo, easier to flow. And likewise for all of these. So when you have this type of b or f type of sound beginning in it, it's usually, or actually not usually, it's always an indication to change n to m. Okay? So I'll give an example of how we would construct and use a preposition, right? Because now it seems like, okay, I have these prepositions. How do I actually uh, use those prepositions? Okay, how do I use the prepositions? Let's say we wanted to say the gold of the man. Okay, the gold of the man. All right. Ignore the cases. It's not like uppercase or anything matters. I just wrote it that way. Okay. If your name is Abanub, you know, or maybe you don't know this, but it's a cool fact to know. Your name translates to gold. Okay. The word noob translates to gold, means gold. Okay, gold. Man in Coptic is going to be Romi. Okay, Romi means man. All right. So I have these two words. I have gold and I have Romi. All right. Now I'm not emphasizing there's no particular man, there's no particular gold. It's not a proper noun. So what am I going to use? Well, I'm going to use a first definite article. Why? Because it's not a gold of the man or the gold of a man. It's not that. It's the gold of the man. So the indication that we have, the indication to use definite articles is the presence of the before gold and the before man. Okay. What am I going to use? Am I going to use a um, masculine or feminine article? This one's a little bit tricky, right? Gold is a masculine word, right? So because gold is a masculine word, and I'll have the vocab posted online for this, because gold is a masculine word, we're going to use a masculine definite article. And likewise, man cannot be feminine. It's also going to require a masculine definite article. But which do we use? Because we're not referring to a proper noun of gold, right? It's not like this is like the gold for in any special way, or the man, right? In the same way we'd say the son of man. It's not that. We're going to use P. Why? Because P is a strong, definite masculine article, so it weakens the noun following it. So we would have P, okay, nob, P nob, okay, followed by something, okay, and then P Romi. But we want to say the gold of the man. Now, if we look back at our prepositions, we have a few options. It's not the gold in the man, it's not the gold on the man, it's not the gold through the man, it's the gold of the man. So N or ente. So great. I'm going to go use N or ente. But I need to pause here. Why? Because the first letter of the noun that we have right here, okay, piromi, piromi meaning the man, is a p sound. So I would usually put an N or ente, usually I would put an N, but because right? I have a p sound. I'm going to change that n to an m. So pinob and piromi means the gold of the man. Okay? Piromi, pinob and piromi. Okay? So this works great. All right. If we wanted to say, for example, the man um, in the house, right? The man in the house. Well, we know khen means in. We don't know the word for house, but we know man is piromi. So we'll start with that. Piromi. Okay. And then we're going to use khen, right? We're going to use khen. So we're going to use um, khen. Okay. And then the word for house is e. Okay. That's the noun for house. Um, it's a masculine noun. So it's going to be preceded by p. Okay. Chen, p, e. Piromi chen pi, the man in the house. But we can also translate it to piromi chen pi. We can translate piromi chen pi as the man is in the house, right? So what we've noticed is that this sentence or this phrase is almost a complete sentence, right? The man is in the house, or the man is in the house. It's not just the man in the house, but the man is in the house, right? Sounds good. Piromi chen pi. What if the man wasn't in the house? How do I make it negative? Okay. Coptic's a little bit interesting in this because usually when you say it in English, the man is not in the house. You add something after the verb or the preposition, right? The man is in the house, so is in. The man is not in the house, right? The negative is going to come in between. In Coptic, instead, we have an article, the negation article. It's called an. On we add to the end of a sentence to negate it. So if I have piromi, okay, piromi, chen, pe, meaning the man is in the house. If I now add the on to the end, it just translates to the man is not in the house. Okay, the man is not in the house. So sounds good. Okay. There are other ways to negate though, not just using on. Okay. The other way is we use what is known as a helping verb. And that's this helping verb. It's called emon. Okay, emon. Emon um, is going to be used in the case of negation for instances in which we have an indefinite case. Okay, so emon best translates to there is not or there are not, right? It really depends on the article that kind of follows it. Um, so that's why it really really depends, right? So we're going to say emon. Let's say we write emon romi chen p e. Okay. This translates to there is not a man in the house. Okay. Now, why don't we have an article in front of romi? The reason we don't have an article in front of romi is because emon, right, kicks out the indefinite article that we would have. So if we had uromi chen pe, there is a man in the house, right? Um, a man in the house, right? Oromi chen pi, a man in the house. Okay. Um, Emon romi chen pi, a man is not in the house. Okay. So if you have a singular indefinite article, it always going to remove it. Emon han romi chen pi, there are not men in the house. Okay. if you had, right, that case, okay, Emon Hanromi Hen PE, okay, that best translates to um, there are not men in the house. If there is a plural indefinite article, you're going to keep it beforehand. Okay. So this is what we know as a negative helping verb. Okay. The other case that we have of another instance of this is oon. Okay. Oon. 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 Hanromi. Hen. Pe. Okay. Best translates to there is a man in the house. So oon here is the opposite of emon, right? Oon is a positive helping verb. Emon is a negative helping verb. Okay. So emon romi hen pi. There is not a man in the house. Okay. Emon han romi hen pi. There are not men in the house. Okay. On han romi hen pi. There are men in the house. Okay. Great. The next case that we're going to look at is the case of a relative. Okay. A relative pronoun. Um, and making words more relative. Okay. I'm going to write out a sentence and I'm going to translate it, and hopefully it will make sense as to what's happening here. Okay. Piromi etchen pi e. What is et doing here? Et, okay, says who. Basically, is to translate who is. So piromi, the man who is in the house. Okay. Piromi etchen pi. The man who is in the house. Okay. Now, this is no longer as independent of a clause as it was before, right? It's more dependent. Okay. So piromi etchen pi. When we add an et before the preposition, right? It's going to become a relative clause, right? The man who is in the house versus piromi chen pi. The man is in the house. Okay. The other case that we can have on the concept of relatives is the relative pronoun ete, very similar to et, right? That gets prefixed to an adverb. This adverb is called emav. You've likely seen it before in Coptic. Emav. What is emav? Emav is a demonstrative, right? A demonstrative or a demonstrative that basically translates to that, right? So if I wrote piromi, if I write piromi ete, okay, emav, what does that mean? That means that man, okay? That man. Ete emav translates to that. There shouldn't be a space here. It should be pretty much compounded, right? So that it needs to be preceded by a um, definite noun. It cannot be preceded by an indefinite noun. Why? Because I can't have that man be indefinite. I can't have like that a man, right? It's that man. So if I'm like demonstrating that man over there, then it needs to necessarily be the case that I have a specific understanding of that man. It's not like a man or just a general conceptual discussion of a man. Okay. The other case that we can have is nearer demonstratives, right? So this refers to that man. What if I want to say this man, right? In this case, we're going to actually use a different article before the noun, okay? And we have basically three cases here. We have pi, okay, tai, nai. This is the case of masculine, this is the case of feminine, and this is the case of plural. We're going to replace the article before the noun with this. So if I write pi romi, okay, pi romi, that means this man, okay? And how do I know whether to use pi, tai, or nai? Well, I need to recognize, is the noun that I'm dealing with masculine or feminine, right? So if I wrote tai mav, that means this mother, right? If I wrote nairomi, right, that means um, these men, right? It's a near demonstrative. If I said, for example, niromi, était mav, that means those men, okay? So notice the difference between the nearer demonstrative and the farther demonstrative, okay? So, sounds perfect, amazing. We're going to take a look at the last case of articles, which is the case of possessive articles, right? Possessive articles. Possessive articles are important because when we're reading Coptic, sometimes we might want to say my father, right? My mother, my brother, okay? And in all of those cases, again, we need to alter what is in front of the noun. So we can begin to notice a pattern here, which is based on the changing of the article in front of the noun, we change a lot about its meaning, right? If I wrote Nairomi, that means these men. But if I change it to, let's say, Piromi, that means the man. Just by changing two or three letters, I have completely altered, right, the basic subject of my sentence, even though the noun is exactly the same. So that's why articles are really, really important when it comes to our understanding of Coptic. Okay. Now, when it comes to possessive articles, we're going to notice a pattern. We're going to see three letters that consistently appear. P, right? Ta or pe, tav, and ne. Okay. This is indicative of masculine. This is indicative of feminine. This is indicative of plural. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a second. Okay. Now, again, the possessive is also going to change, okay, based on am I talking in the first person, the second person, or the third person. So let's say I want to say my mother, okay, my mother. What am I going to recognize? Well, I know the word for mother is mav. And I know that if I'm going to use a possessive article, it needs to be beginning with t, right? Because mav is a feminine noun and my article must agree with the noun. My article must also be feminine. I cannot have a masculine article in front of a feminine noun. Okay? What are the first person possessive articles? They're the following: pa, ta, na. So if I say tamav, which you've likely heard before, tamav means my mother, right? Tamav Irini, my mother Irini. Okay? So tamav means my mother. You could be a guy and you're still going to use tamav, right? You could be a woman, you're still going to use tamav. Okay? Tamav. If I wanted to say my brother, okay? My brother is pa son. Son translates to brother. Okay? So if I wanted to say my brother, right? I'm going to say pa son. Son is the noun for brother. Pa is going to be the first person possessive article for a masculine noun. Okay? So that's how we follow it. What if I was talking second person, right? What if I want to say your mother, right? Your mother. Well, again, it's going to be the basic simple p, t, n being the indication of difference. But instead we have something different. We have peck, tech, neck. Okay? Peck being second person possessive, right? When the subject is masculine and singular. So notice there's a difference here, okay? Peck now applies to the person we're speaking to, okay? Tech for feminine, neck, okay? So it's the same thing, right? Um, when we're referring to a guy, okay? This is important. So these are all in the cases of masculine, the subject being masculine. Okay, this is really important. Here, when we looked at pa, ta, and na, whether you're a first person female or first person male does not change the pa, ta, or na. Here, pek, tek, or neck is only going to be used when you are speaking to a guy. What if you're speaking to a woman? Then you're using p, t, and na. Okay? So this is again for a masculine noun, feminine noun, plural noun. Okay? Pek, tek, neck, second person male. Pe, te, ne, second person female. Okay? What about third person male? That's going to be pef, okay? Tef, nef. Okay, when you see this F, 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 that's the male. That's the male. Okay. For third person female, it's going to be pes, right? Tes, nes. Okay. What about our, right? That's going to be his. This is going to be her. This is going to be your feminine. This is going to be your uh, male. Okay. What about our? Our is going to be pen, right? Ten, nen. Okay. Our. Don't confuse nen here for the general um, indefinite plural article nen. You'll know it basically by the context of the sentence. Okay. There's also second person plural. Very rare, but it's peten. So the longest one actually. Peten, teten, niten. Okay. Your, that's plural. All right. And the last is po, to, and no, which means there. Okay. So, for example, when you read pen choice, choice means Lord, right? Pen choice, our Lord, right? Pen choice. Pat choice, my Lord. Pat choice, right? Um, Pefson, his brother, right? Um, Tefmov, his mother, right? Tefmov. Why Tef? Because even though we're talking about a guy's mother, Tef is indicating that we're dealing with a feminine noun, Mav, right? So all of that. Okay. There's one last thing I want to introduce here, and it's the infix ke. Okay. Ke basically translates to other, and we insert it between a article and the noun. So if I write, I keep saying wrote, but if I write pk romi, That means the the other man. And if I wrote Hanke Romi, that means other men, right? But if I said, for example, Nike Romi, right? Nike Romi, that means the other men, right? Because the difference between these two is that this is an indefinite article, this is a definite article. Okay? The only case, there's an exception to this, is the case of singular indefinite. Singular indefinite on its own would be uromi, right? A man. But when we're saying another man, we're not going to put ukeromi. We don't do that. Just keromi. Okay? Keromi translates to another man. And you saw that before in the case where when we put emon, right, which is a negating helping verb, right? Emon romi chen pi, we're basically saying the man is not in the house, right? We didn't include emon uromi chen pi. We just said emon romi, right? So that little addition kicked out the singular indefinite article. Basically, think about it. The singular indefinite article is very weak. It gets kicked out very, very easily. Okay. So the reason why I want to know all of that is because on the Quizlet that's going to be posted for this, there's going to be a lot of different words, and I just want there to be pattern recognition in terms of the articles and the nouns that are being used. Okay? But so I pray that you guys found this video helpful in any way, shape, and form. If there's any feedback you guys have for future lessons, please let me know. But said genuinely, I love you guys so much. And if you need anything at all, please always let me know regarding at hand, housing, food, whatever you guys need, just let me know. And I promise you guys really only, you deserve more than the moon and the stars. I promise. So let me know if you guys need anything. But I love you, and I will, God willing, see you all soon.